Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast live on Chronicle Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and later on our podcast channel. I'm Andrew Musgrove and it is transfer deadline day. Now, we saw Lee Ryder outside St James's Park earlier. I'm now joined by our other NUFC writer, Ciaran Kelly. And Ciaran, it's not a transfer deadline day, not the window that Newcastle United fans would love. Today is the anniversary of Michael Owen signing back in 2005 and 15,000 people there at the unveiling in the Leazer's End. Nothing like that this window. Nothing like that in many, many years. But there is little bits happening. We'll start with the arrival of Santiago Munoz. Many people obviously liking his arrival to that of the Hollywood blockbuster goal. What have you made of that? He's going to go out in the 23s, initial 18-month contract. He's come to play by, what people have been saying on social media, journalists over there, people that have been briefing about him. What do you make of the move?
Yeah, it's interesting. I remember when that name first kind of dropped on Newcastle fans' radar, maybe like a year ago, and everyone obviously put the two and two together there with the goal film. And I never thought he would end up at Newcastle. I think it is like something out of a Football Manager or something. But clearly, we've seen with Rodrigo Vilca last summer that Newcastle are starting to develop this kind of random policy really of taking an overseas player who's under the age of 21. Obviously it's been complicated by the Brexit regulations now, but they got the dispensation for this lad. He's obviously got a lot of potential. I think it's making huge headlines in Mexico and the US, which Newcastle have struggled to do in recent years. You look at how other clubs commercially have been moving forward in those areas. Newcastle are lagging behind, but it's just stress that they've watched him. Steve Nixon, as I was saying, they have this idea of kind of low risk moves of taking talented kids from abroad, seeing how they handle the English game, seeing how they adjust to it, and seeing what can happen there. It's very much an under 23 signing. I think it's one just to see how he gets on. We've seen with Vilca. I think technically a really, really, really exciting player, but physically to adjust, it's really hard. When you're come from a different culture, you're learning a new language during a pandemic as well. I think I read that Munoz is planning to bring his mother with him. I think that's a brilliant idea because those little things can make a huge difference for young players. So it's interesting. I think had it been a normal club in a normal summer whereby under 23s players are like buried down in terms of ins, people would have been like, oh well, why not? I think it's kind of split fans because obviously fans are intrigued, but then they're fans thinking, well, is this the only business they're doing on deadline day, and why so? Because you do have to pay a loan fee for this player. I wouldn't have thought he's just coming for free, So it's one to watch. I'd be interested to see. It just feels to me, it's peculiar in a way that the under 23s approach, the academy approach, it's a bit, they're going for guys released by Chelsea and then they're signing these random South America. You'd hope with Steve Harper coming in now, in the years to come, we get kind of a steady, established, solid approach, because there's been a lot of changes there. Obviously, they couldn't help the manager leaving last month, Chris Hogg, but you just hope there's a bit of stability coming in because these players need it as well. They're young guys, but yeah, one to watch.
Yeah, I think you're right. Had this been a window where Newcastle have gone out and strengthened, then people would be really excited about that because, everyone loves the goal movie. Callum Wilson mentioned it when he signed. So there would be a real sense of excitement. But given the window in terms of senior players, I can understand how some fans are reacting because, we've got comments in here. For instance, I'll put this one up here from John. And he says he's really concerned about the lack of signings and what our rivals are buying players. He fears relegation, and I can see where he's coming from because you do look around. We've just seen Leeds buying Dan James. We've got Palace going after the Celtic striker who Newcastle were previously linked to. The teams around have really strengthened. I mean, Palace needed to. Obviously, they've released a host of players, but they've not stood still. They've gone out and strengthened. Whereas Newcastle, they've only brought in Joe Willock. We've seen already this season the reliance on St Maximin, the reliance on Wilson, and even with him in the side, it hasn't gone to plan. Wilson obviously left the pitch early against Southampton. So there's a gamble going into the final few hours, and Newcastle, in my opinion, despite what Steve Bruce says, Ciaran, have got a weaker squad. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, it's I think when you try and consolidate and you stay where you are, you inevitably go backwards. It's just natural, I think personally, I was really pleased when they got Willock in permanently. I thought, that sends a really important message, not just trying to get him on loan again, not just short-term measure. You're actually going out and getting a guy in a 6-year deal who's a brilliant player, and he is a key player, but they need one or two more. And like I said at the time, it's great that they've kept that group together, finished the previous season so strongly, but you do need to strengthen as well. And to have got to the stage where 5 hours before the deadline closes and they haven't brought in at least one player on loan, it's really frustrating. I think, yes, the club have been hit by the pandemic. Yes, they've renewed some big contracts. They've bought some players in the past 12 months. But for me to not be able to get one more player on loan, I'm still trying to get my head around it, 5 hours till the window closes.
Yeah, we were just talking off camera about kind of how we address this live and what we talk about. And we mentioned there how things have changed throughout the day. There was confidence that Chowdhury would be coming in maybe, this morning, or maybe more of a hopeful punt. And then it was that, maybe Newcastle actually done for their first team business. They'll sign Munoz, but that'll be it. And now there's reports that actually they are still trying to get in maybe 2 players on loan or 2 possible deals. And the question is, and again, people are asking this in the comments, and you've mentioned it there, why leave it so late? I mean, we are here at 6:15. Obviously, the window closes was at 11 o'clock. I mean, you are scrapping around. Are you going to be able to find any quality in the last 5 hours? And B, again, just why leave it so late?
Yeah, I mean, it's weird as well because, they have done this in previous years of signing players on deadline day. You look at Almiron actually signed on deadline day, Dubravka, Slimani, Federico Fernandez, Antonio Barreca. It's been a real mixed bag over the years, whether it's January or August. But yeah, particularly when you look at the players, they are players who've been on their radar since July 1st, and whether they're waiting to see whether it's possible. I mean, they could have got Chowdhury on loan before the start of the season. No questions asked. He's not played any games for Leicester so far this season. He wants to get game time. He's looked at Willock and saw what a loan move did for him. It's at a stage at Leicester where even in the Community Shield, Rodgers brought on 6 subs and Chowdhury didn't even get on. So someone like that, that was a deal there to be done. It didn't have to be done at 6 p.m. And you look at Steve Bruce, he got his wish. He got his number 1 target in Willock last summer. He wanted a different transfer policy. They changed the policy. He's got his way probably more than some of his predecessors. But I think he'd be really frustrated if they ended the window and they hadn't actually strengthened. He will publicly say, we're no weaker. And technically, they've only lost Andy Carroll in terms of that squad they had last season. But to expect, it will put so much pressure on St. Maximin and Wilson and various other players to keep carrying the team, really, because it gives them such a lift. They see a new face come in. I think someone like Chowdhury, I know fans are a bit split on him, but I think he would be good for, you think of that midfield. It'll knock a couple of players up a level more than anything else. We haven't seen the best of some of those midfielders in the first 4 games. I think someone like him, the way he is in training, if he's thrown himself in tackles, he has that kind of energy and bite that would just elevate a few players. And I think, as I was saying, he's someone that Bruce feels could actually improve that squad, and that's really important because I'm sure the hierarchy are wary of just bringing in any player for the sake of it, but this is a guy he's wanted for so long. Go back to January even, before Willock even emerged as a target publicly, they were trying to sign Chowdhury. So the only reason it didn't go through then was because Leicester couldn't get a replacement, whereas, this deal has been there to be done for all summer, really.
on our website, you can read Ciaran's opinion piece on the transfer window so far. The title is Newcastle's Chief's message to Bruce on transfer deadline day. Can you just explain to our viewers and listeners, Ciaran, a bit more about that article and what you think kind of the day in the window has said to Steve Bruce and obviously to the fans who are watching this?
Yeah, so I mean, these things always change on deadline day, but I got to the point around, what was it, 5 p.m. where I just felt this had to go out there. It was just waiting until 11 would have just been cheating a bit. But I think it reminded me a lot of after the Brighton game, weirdly, when there was that speculation with Steve Bruce still being a job after such a bad defeat. They were only 2 points above the relegation zone. I think we were running 2 wins in 20 at the time, and the club really quickly nipped it in the bud the day after the game in the morning, made it clear through briefings that he wasn't going anywhere. And you thought, okay, that they've made their decision, whatever you think about it, whatever fans thought about the time, they made their decision. It kind of just calmed it a little bit in terms of people knew, okay, after that international break, Steve was still going to be in charge. And it seemed like a similar tactic this morning. Obviously, I think it was like before even 11 o'clock in the morning, and it emerged that the club had a briefing that they weren't going to do any more business in the window other than Joe Willock. There was no money left. I know that's a line we've heard before. And it kind of just felt, Steve Bruce had felt on Friday, his main concern was whether other clubs would let their players join him on loan rather than would he be able to sign them. But it just very much been a real change over the past few days. You think of after Southampton game, he was so deflated when he spoke to the press. He was asked, will it go to the wire deals? And the change in body language and tone in 24 hours was remarkable. And bear in mind, this is when Carl Dallo's had medical tests. He might not have to name 4 goalkeepers in his squad, so there's still a possibility there was space for a new signing, and he just didn't sound hopeful. And it'd be really interesting to see if they do get someone in. I think if they don't, it leaves him in a real tough position because obviously it's coinciding with what happened at the weekend. Obviously a section of the fans making their feelings clear after that awful first hour, half an hour even. And I think I worked out they've 17 league games between now and the January window opening. I'm sorry to be looking ahead to January, but that's 51 points. They've obviously claimed 1 point so far. Do they have the tools to go into January in a healthy position where they're not looking over their shoulder? And you just hope it's not a long winter ahead. But even with St. Maximin and Wilson fit at the moment, they're finding it hard to beat teams. And I think the past few games have shown why he wants an athletic centre back, why he wants an enforcer in the middle of the park. It's arguably strengthened his case, but if he doesn't get 1 or 2 of those players, then to stand still, as I was saying earlier, is hard enough. They'll fall backwards potentially.
Yeah, I did enjoy this comment here from Andrea Corker, and he says, "Your lads, your faces say it all. Poor window." And I agree. Even if Newcastle managed to get 2 across the line tonight, I mean, are they going to be of any real quality? I do think they're gambling on St. Maximin and Wilson firing, throughout the season. We know that they do pick up injuries, like we mentioned earlier. Wilson had to leave the pitch early on against Southampton, and even with them in the side, like you say, they are struggling to pick up points. So it is a massive gamble, and I do worry about what the plan B is if they're not on form. Even if they just get marked out the game, where did Newcastle turn? And it is slightly worrying, and I do fear, even with a few hours left, even if they do get a signing or 2 in over the, like I say, it's not going to be a good window in my opinion. You, Ciaran, you get to see what Steve Bruce is like in the press conferences. Do you think he'll be frustrated at how it's gone so far? Do you think what he will portray publicly will be different how he's feeling privately?
Yeah, I'd imagine so, to be honest. I think he's, all the pressers I've been at over the 2 years he's been here. He's always very respectful towards the hierarchy. I've come across managers over the years who, wouldn't think anything of making it be known that they didn't get their way on one thing or the other. He's not really like that, and I think it has worked in his favor. You look at, as I was saying, the change of policy last summer, getting Willock in installments. The club traditionally pay fees up front, but they broke all the rules to get a player like Willock in, with the fee being paid over a period of time. I think he's realistic as well, to the point of, you'd wish he could be a bit more sometimes, but I think he knows the climate. And the frustration thing is, I think we all know the pandemic's hit the club. Why can't they come out and say how it's really hit the club? We obviously had last year's accounts, but supporters need that transparency and clarity as well. They see Crystal Palace, they see Brentford, they see Norwich buying 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 players. Why is it that Newcastle, admittedly getting Willock's brilliant, but why is it that they can only bring him in permanently? And we all think we know the answer. It'd be great to actually get that, but the hierarchy don't come out and speak publicly. And that's the other thing for Steve Bruce in the next few months. Obviously, if results don't go his way, he is that guy being wheeled out every single week. Not to be sympathetic towards him, but there's just no one else at the club coming out and taking ownership and communicating with the fans, because that's what they deserve. Because this has been another crazy window. If you told me July 1st they'd sign Willock permanently, I would have been delighted. But if you also told me that that would be it, I'd be disappointed. And I think to not bring 1 or 2 players on loan on top of that, it's a real gamble. But that's what Ashley does.
Yeah, that is Mike Ashley's Newcastle United, unfortunately. Final question then, Ciaran, before I'll let you get off. If the window does shut tonight and it is only Joe Willock, okay, maybe Chowdhury comes in, how would you rate the window? And would you say Steve Bruce has been sufficiently backed that, if it does go wrong in the next few weeks, next few months, you can, the hierarchy can turn around and say, well, we have backed you, you've just not got the results? Or can Steve Bruce maybe turn around and say, well, you didn't give me the tools, you didn't give me the players I needed to build this team and go forward?
It's
a tough question. I do apologize.
Yeah, no, I think it's, I don't think, I think he could legitimately say he should have had, 2 or 3 players more. I think it would have helped had they been able to move on a few players as well. You look at the fringe players they have, he would have been open to letting go, just no interest there whatsoever. The kind of clubs that would usually be in for these players just don't seem to have the money, or don't seem to want to go in for them, and that's always the danger. It's always a buyer's market in these windows, but this summer particularly, it's been hard for Newcastle to shift players. Ironically, though, you've got people like Munoz, Save, going back to Aaron's callback, all those players who are on decent wages in the last 12 months, they've moved on. So that's what's kind of annoyed me as well. I know they've given up big deals. I know they've signed a number of players, but why can't the club just come out and explain, well, yeah, we've done that, but this is why? Fans need to know that, because they're looking at it and they're seeing, how the hell can't you sign a player on loan when you've moved on decent earners like that? That's the frustration. And I think if they do just end up with Willock, they are where they were at the end of the last season, and that isn't sufficient backing, no, in my opinion.
Well, Ciaran, thank you for sharing the update. It is just gone 25 past 6. So for you guys listening on the podcast and then watching this later on, bear that in mind, because things can change and probably will change at some point. But in the meantime, head over to Chronicle Live. The live blog, Transfer Deadline Day live blog, is up and running. We'll put everything up there, all the updates, and enjoy the rest of your Tuesday evening.